Hello again and welcome to another edition of Shed Talk, my magazine type video series that looks at all things exhibition budgerigar, including keeping, breeding and showing. Well, firstly, can I apologise for getting the last video out a little bit late than I usually do. It was the genetics part 5 video. Unfortunately, it's that time of the year. I am an invigilator for one of the local schools during the exams, and in the UK here it is exam time, so most of my days are taken up doing that at the moment. So if the videos are out a little bit late, do accept my apologies, but that's the way it is until the end of the exam period. Well, of course, getting back to this particular video, we're going to do a shed update, and in particular we're going to look at closing down the breeding cages or the breeding season for this year. I close down my breeding cages based really on the day I go on holiday. What I like to do is to work back from the weekend before that. I need to make sure that by that weekend before I go away on holiday, I'm down to just 3 main flights. So the nappy flight with the last of the youngsters in there, the finch flight and the main budgerigar flight. So I like to get down to those 3 flights, and in order to do that I work back from the last putting the last youngster into the flight cage, looking at when that one is going to be weaned, when it will have hatched, and when the last egg will have laid. And for me that means I need to, any birds that aren't laying at the moment will be taken out, and the others will be on their last round. So I'll quickly whiz round the breeding cages, give you an update on them, and at the same time talk about a little bit about how I close each of the breeding cages down. Well, as is customary now, let's start off with cage 1. You may remember this pair. This was the yellow face grey dominant pied. That did really well for me at the Oxford 1910 stock show. It won best intermediate at that show, and it was paired to another yellow face grey hen. They were quite nicely matched. The hen had bred for me before, but not particularly well, and once again she didn't really perform here. She, in the first round, she managed to hatch 1 chick, but failed to feed it, so that chick died unfortunately. So so we got nothing off of this pair. All the eggs have been removed. Hen is sort of coming back into condition. She took a really long time. I was going to split this pair anyway, but she hasn't started laying again. I've not seen the cockbird treading the hen, not for the one to try in. He's really keen, but she just doesn't seem interested. So the cockbird will come out of this breeding cage now, and we'll leave the hen in the breeding cage for a few days, just to see if she does decide to go in the nest box. If she does start laying, then we will either try and move those eggs to a different nest box, or we'll let her sit on them, and if they're full, let her hatch them. There will be time, if she starts laying right now, for me to get those eggs through to weaning. You know, chances, it's unlikely that they'll be full anyway, but there we go. So that is cage 1. What I'll do is I will now talk through how I do that, how I get the bird out, what I do with the cockbird, where that cockbird goes, and then what I do with the hen and the cage. But when I split the pair, I always like to remove the cockbird first. The main reason, I suppose, for this is, from my point of view, it seems to me that the hen is the one who is putting the most effort in when they're in the breeding cages. So I'd like to make sure that she is not stressed too much when we split the pair up. And I think by leaving her in the breeding cage, surroundings she knows, this is going to be the less stressful for her. So I take the cockbird out first, I will always leave the nest box open for a couple of days after I've removed the cockbird, just in case a hen decides to start laying. So I'll leave the nest box open for a couple of days. With the cockbird, I will give him a thorough check over. I like to make sure that he's in reasonable, or still in reasonable condition. Looks all right. I check around the face and around the beak area in particular, make sure that there's no problems in that area. Check around the vent, obviously, to make sure that he's nice and clean. And then the final thing I will do is, before I pop him into the stock cage, is to give the bird some spot-on treatment, ivermectin treatment, just in case of mites. I do this when they first go into the box, and then I do it again when they come out. I either do it when they bring them out of the nest box, or when I put them in back in from the stock cage into the main flight. I currently falling on the preference of doing it when I take the bird out of the breeding cage and put them in the stock cage, because then that gives a couple of weeks for the treatment to work before they go back into the main flight. I move the bird, or the cock bird, I put him in the stock cage. Here will be the other, any other cock birds that I've removed from the breeding cages. No hens will go in there. I'll give the hen a couple of weeks in the breeding cage, and then I will move her from the breeding cage directly back into the main flight. That will give her a couple of weeks rest and recuperation. So that's splitting the pairs up. So there we are, and that is what I do with all of the cages as I close them down. So you can see how I go about that. We'll have a quick look at cage 2. This pair were doing really well for me. So it's a normal dark green, double check that, sorry, a normal light green cockbird, paired to a grey-green cinnamon hen, quite a nice grey-green cinnamon hen. Laid 8 eggs in their first round, and of that 6 were full, all going really well. Eggs started hatching, and unfortunately the hen just absolutely refused to feed them. I lost the first 2 chicks because of that. I then tried fostering out the 3rd and 4th chick to cage 3, where the hen was just feeding a single chick, but she didn't feed them either, those 2 chicks. What I then did was, the last couple of eggs I moved in to cage 3 as well, so before they hatched, hoping that as her hearing them chipping away and chirping away inside the egg would encourage her then to start feeding once they hatched. One of the eggs was dead in shell, and the final egg hatched, and the hen again refused to feed it. So really disappointed, because it was going really well for this pair. You know, I had 6 full eggs. I'd have expected to get a couple of that at the bare minimum, but unfortunately not to be the case. And I'm now going to split this pair. They haven't started laying again, or she hasn't started laying again, although she is starting to go back in the nest box. So I will split this pair as I did for the last ones. So moving on then to cage number 3. This was my best cockbird, who had been in the breeding cage previously, and had a couple of rounds where we got a couple of birds off him, and back in with a brand new hen, which is actually my currently my best hen in the flight. So and she had been in the breeding cage before, but hadn't actually produced anything. I think she laid one round. 1 egg was full, but it didn't hatch. So I've now got a proven cockbird with him, and we were hoping a bit more success here. And indeed we had that. We had a few, I think we had 6 eggs laid, of which 3 were full. Unfortunately, one of those eggs was addled. Another one of the eggs was dead in shell, hatched but died. So shortly after hatching, it wasn't dead in shell, hatched but died shortly after hatching. And the final chick hatched, and being fed really well, growing on quite nicely. As always, when you've got a hen just feeding one chick, it never seems to be as the growth never seems to be as good from my point of view as it does when they're breeding or when they're feeding a full round. I don't know whether they just get bored with just feeding a single chick. But it is healthy, it is coming on nicely, has been rung. So touch wood, we will get that youngster onto the perch. Once that chick has been weaned, of course, this breeding cage will be closed down as with all the others. So let's now consider cage 4. You may remember that this is the outcross, so a sky blue opaline outcross that had a number of chicks in their first round of 3. I think it was 3 chicks in their first round, so did quite well for me there. Now on their second round, the first couple of eggs the first few eggs appeared to be clear, and you might remember from a couple of videos ago we had some problems with this pair in terms of how they reacted when the chicks came out of the nest box. I had to remove the cockbird was attacking the hen and trying to mate with the youngsters, so I removed the cockbird. Then when I had removed the youngsters, I put the cockbird back in, and then the hen attacked the cockbird, so I removed him for another couple of days, put him back in, and they were getting on fine. And like I said in the last video, I think it was almost like wedded bliss in there. Well, second round started. I think the first few eggs being infertile was down to that initial phase where the hen would come back into condition before I'd managed to get the cockbird back into the cage. But we now have 2 full eggs in there, and the first one is due to hatch in about a week's time. So touch wood, we'll get another couple of chicks off this before that pair before we finish. Well, that was pair 4. What about pair 5? This pair was a pair that I just started to lay the last time I looked at them, I think. We've got a rather nice grey opaline in there. I think it's a cinnamon, actually, a cinnamon grey opaline in there with a grey-green cinnamon hen that I've had in the breeding cage once before. So this pair have they laid 5 eggs, of which 2 of them were full, and the first of those has just hatched, and I'm really pleased to say, having checked the nest box, that the chick has been fed. So you know, that's the first hurdle over. I think because this hen had been in the breeding cage before, she knew what to do when the chick had hatched. So I'm hopeful that when the next or the second of the full eggs hatch, we're going to get 2 more chicks off of this pair. But as always, you know, we need to touch wood to make sure that or before we just, you never know what can happen with these birds. But that's cage 4 and cage 5. We'll just have a final look at cage 6. Well, finally then, let's talk about the pair in cage 6. This was a cockbird, an opaline sky blue cockbird, one of mine, with the outcross hen. Neither of these 2 have produced anything previously. This hen's had a couple of partners but not produced anything. And once again, same thing, she clears the nest box but then doesn't go on to lay anything. So this pair is about to be split. I may give this hen a good long rest in the flight, and I will try her one more time in next breeding season. So come September, October time, when I start the pair up again, I will probably give this hen another go with a very much proven cockbird, and just see whether we can get anything off of her. So a bit disappointing really, but there you go, that's the way it is. It was a gifted outcross, so I can't really complain that she hasn't produced anything. So there we are. That is a full roundup of all of the cages and those that are being, and you see now I've closed the cages down at the end of the breeding season. So not too bad, not the greatest of breeding seasons, a bit better than last year, which we can always hope for. What we now need to hope is that we've improved in terms of the quality of the overall birds. I do have keep having a quick look in the nappy flight, and we will in a future video once again do another look at all of the young birds, or the better of the young birds. I do think there are one or two in there that I'm actually quite pleased with. So, but like I say, we'll look at those in the next or in a future video. So there we go. That's the roundup of all the breeding cages. Well, there we are. That's just about all we've got time for in this video. As you can probably hear, I've moved the cockbirds, the 3 cockbirds that always split the pair, into the stock cage. That was a couple of them calling to their hens. So they're now in there, settling in reasonably nicely. That hasn't disturbed them too much. And that's how I split it. And I've still got 3 pairs down. One, as we say, one as we've seen with its one chick that should be, hopefully will go through to weaning. Then I'll split that pair, a couple on full eggs, and that one chick that's just hatched, which is absolutely brilliant. As always, if you do enjoy the video, don't forget to hit the like button. All the likes do help the channel. And of course, if you haven't subscribed yet, then please do. And a big thank you to all those people who have already subscribed. It's much appreciated. And as always, as I say, you know, hit the bell if you want early notifications of the videos. Hopefully I'll be able to get videos out once a week as I normally do. But as I said at the beginning, do bear with me a little bit. Somebody did ask about the soft food, so the next video hopefully will be a quick look at my soft food. But until then, please do stay safe and enjoy your birds.